Hi, it's Chris from Chris Loves Crochet and Crochet Recreations. I wanted to invite you on an adventure with me. I am going to be making a freeform capelet, a little shawl with freeform scrumbles all over it. And so what I would love to do is to make this a part one and show you how to make the capelet template. And then we're going to go from there to making some pieces, and I'll show you as I go along and make some pieces, and then how to attach. So this is part one of hopefully just a 2 or 3 part series on making the freeform capelet that we can wear. So hopefully it'll be fun. So hang in there, and I'm going to show you some of the other freeform things that I've done. I'm going to insert some of the pictures in here so that you can see and understand and remember what I was talking about before in a different video if you haven't seen it, or if you have seen it. I'm going to put them in here so you can see. Okay, so hang on, and then we'll get started. Okay, so to make this freeform shawl capelet, what you're going to need is to make a capelet, or if you already have one, something that's made kind of open mesh like this, just use that if you want to, unless you want to keep it as it is. But you can use something that you already have made, even like a top, like a swimsuit cover-up, or just a fillet piece that you wear over t-shirts. You can use one of those. I'm choosing to do it on this cape, which I'll show you in a minute how I made that. And you need to go through and find or make a bunch of scrumbles. Scrumbles are just pieces that you make either from patterns. You can start with a pattern and then end up with, then add things to the pattern. This was just a double spiral, and then I added the box stitch around the edge. This was just a spiral. I just started the box stitch and just made a spiral. Oh, and then I made some trebles around to make it larger, and then I made some more it's not a popcorn stitch, it's a bobble around the edge. And then I did some top stitching with this kind of teal color around the edge, because I wanted to, because that's what scrumbles are. You just do what makes you happy. So you can use some pieces of pattern and then use funky yarn for it, and then add another piece to it, or you can start completely from scratch and just do whatever your heart sings at you. So I made a little button thing here, and then did a inside here, if you can see. I did the button thing, and then I did the crab stitch right here, and then I did some of these loop-de-loops to make it stand out a lot, and then I did just some petals around, and then I filled in the petals, and it became very wobbly, and so that's why I had to put this edge on to do the decreases. And so you're going to need scrumbles, something to put it on, or something, or make something to put it on. Make some scrumbles, find your scrumbles, have an idea now of what your main colors are, and have those available. Your crochet hook, of course. I'm using a 4.5 for this size 3 yarn. You're going to need some scissors. You're going to need maybe a stitch marker. They're always good to have with you. You're going to need a measuring tape in order to start with it. If you're going to be making the cape, as I'm going to show you how, you're going to need a measuring tape. Later on, you'll need a tapestry needle in order to sew in your ends. And I just really love these bent tip ones because it really helps go through, dig through some of these funky stitches. And also I'm going to be doing some bullion stitches, and so I have a different tutorial on how to make an easy, simple bullion stitch, and I use a latch hook. And so if you have a latch hook, you too can join in the fun of making the simple bullion stitch. Really easy. So I'm going to be using that too. So these are the supplies that I'm going to use in order to make a capelet, or a little shawl, freeform, with all kinds of fun little things. In order to make a freeform little capelet shawl, first I had to make the template that I was going to put it on. And so I made this shawl, and I did make a video of it, and then I got too carried away and deleted it. My phone got full and I deleted it before I had a chance to move it over. So here's the shawl, little capelet. It's not a really big shawl, it's not a really big capelet. It's going to be heavy with the freeform pieces that I'm going to attach to it, so it's going to pull down a little bit, and I don't want it to be too overwhelming in doing this. So in making this little capelet, what I did was I used some ice yarn, and it is a cotton bamboo light, so it's really soft and it's really light, and it's a number 3, 60% cotton and 40%, I'm sorry, 60% bamboo, 40% cotton. It calls for a 3 to 4 millimeter knitting needles, and so I used a 4.5 millimeter crochet hook in order to make this capelet. And so in lieu of showing you how I made it, it's really, really simple. So if it was difficult, I would have remade the video for you, I promise. But I can just tell you what I did, and I'm going to insert my instructions that hopefully are easy enough to read. I'm going to insert a picture of this so that you can pause on it and look at it. But what I did was, first I just chained a loose chain about the length that I wanted to go around my shoulders, to where I knew where it was gonna, if I wanted to put a button or if I wanted to tie it closed, I would have the right length here. And for me, that was 25 inches. You might want it smaller. You might want it larger and have it kind of more towards your shoulders. This is kind of medium, and I'll put in a picture of it sitting on my mannequin. You can kind of see where it sets on the shoulders. And in order to start, we just did the chain, and I did a chain in an odd number to get to the length that I wanted. I don't have any idea how many chains they are. So, but I did it in an odd number. And then in order to start, what I did was I double crocheted in the 6th chain, and that allowed for one space on the top. We have a double crochet with the 3 of the chain 3, and then we have one space before we have the double crochet, because then the repeated pattern is to crochet one, here I'm showing you upside down, is to skip 1, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, all the way across. And that gives us our chain 1 spaces to start our V's in, because this capelet is just made with V's, with V stitches. And I started with double crochet V's. So I would chain 3 and turn, because we always want to have a chain 3 or a double crochet along the edge to make it a nice straight edge all the way down. It's not part of a V. So I came here and I chained 3, and then I did a double crochet V, which is just a 1 chain V. So it's a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the first chain 1, and then double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the second chain 1, all the way across. And then I chained 3 and I turned, and then I did the same thing, except I put a chain 1 in between each of the V's, and then chain 3 and turned, I think this is where I started to chain 4 and turn. Well, anyway, chain 3 and turn, and do another V, but put 2 chains in between, and then 3, and then 4. And after the 4th chain, after the chain 4 round, I changed to trebles. So the stitches in the fillet capelet started to get the holes started to get bigger and longer. Since they're getting bigger, they were getting wider, I decided to make them longer as well. So on the 8th and 9th, I made treble V's with just one space in one chain in between. So I made a treble, chain 1, treble, and then I'm still at chain 4, so I chained 4, and then a treble, chain 1, treble. And then the next one I did a medium V with chain 2 in the V, but kept the chain 4 in between. And then the next one was a chain 3 in between. So I think I was showing you the wrong ones, but the last 3 are of trebles, and I started with a chain 1 in between in the V's, and then a chain 2 in the V's, and then a chain 3 in the V's. And then I just ended it. I didn't make a cute little border or anything because I'm not going to wear this by itself. And I don't want to take away from the scrumbles, the freeform pieces that I'm going to attach to this. So like I said, I'm going to put this picture in. I'll put it in right here. And the picture of the shawl that's on the mannequin right here. Then I went through my scrumble bag and I pulled out some different pieces that seemed to go together. And they didn't all have this light pink addition to them. Some of them, this is just the way it came, this scrumble. And where's the matching scrumble? Here's the other scrumble that matches it. It already had light pink and it had some gray in it. And then I had some others. This one I added the light pink to it. This one I didn't need to. This one I didn't need to. This one I added this light pink to it, and it kind of, it started to it started to change its shape, which is fine. Now I've got a diamond, and I think that's better than having a square anyway as a scrumble. But this is the Catherine wheel scrumble that was on my previous video, the Catherine wheel. And so then I just made some shells that go around, and it kind of pulled it in this direction. Well, I kind of shaped it too, but it kind of pulled it in that direction. So now I have a piece to put on my shawl capelet. And this was a kind of a messy little star flower that I put the pink on around the edge. And I leave really long tails when I make this, when I make the scrumble. If I know that that's the edge, then I make a long tail, because all of these need to be attached to something else. Excuse me, whether that is another piece or if it's attached to your template or your background piece, which is the capelet. And so some of these, like I said, this one already had kind of a light pink. And what I decided when I made the gray and I saw the colors that all went together, and I had some other, so I told you I'd use the cotton bamboo light for the shawl, and I had some pieces that had some gray in it. This one has a sparklies in the gray that were already in it, and a lot of the pieces already had pink and gray. So I went to my other bamboo light, and I happened to have a light pink. And I don't know why I end up with pink and gray all the time when I just go out and just shop for yarn or go online and shop for yarn. These two colors end up in my in my stash. So they're kind of my favorite colors, I guess, to go together, the gray and the pink. You can wear it with black and white and dark pink and fuchsia and even with red, but not with this. But so we have all of those colors. So I've decided to use some of these colors to tie in some of these pieces that didn't have enough of one or the other color. Like this one, before I put on this light pink, it had pink, so it would have been okay, but I see all my tails, but it was very ripply by the time I ended this scrumble, and so I did a round of light pink and did some decreases in order to make it lay flat so that I can add it nicely to the shawl. And this one, a little heart, already had the pink on it. So that's what I did. And then I took the pink and I added a couple more pieces that were purely pink. I did a popcorn stitch flower, which there are some tutorials out there to do a popcorn stitch flower. There's patterns. And then I also, from my little trusty little crochet book, there is a bullion stitch flower that I did. Followed the pattern to do that. So it's not technically a scrumble, but it's a nice little piece to add. So what I'm going to do now is to add some gray onto this popcorn stitch, and I'm going to add some bullion stitches around the edge of this, just to make it a little bit bigger, and to add some interest. Now I'm not sure if I'm going to do anything in between the rows of the popcorn stitches or not. I'm going to decide that as I go, because that's what scrumbles are. You crochet as your heart desires. So to add some bullion stitches around here. Now what I do when I'm adding what I think will be, well, when I'm adding any border, I may have a border and then a border and then a border, I only stitch in the front loops. That way the back loops are available for another stitch to either do another border or to stitch onto another piece or to stitch onto your base piece, which is the shawl for us. So what I'm going to do is use the gray. So this piece is going to be just the base colors. I'm going to start with a crochet hook. Make a little slip knot, and now on my flower behind here, you can see behind the popcorn stitches these are your stitches back here. The popcorn pops out in front of the stitches, and you can see that there are chain one and then the popcorn stitch and then chain one and then the popcorn stitch. The chain one is much larger and a little bit easier to work in, so I think I'm going to work in primarily in that chain one and skip the popcorn stitch back here actually. So I'm going to do bullion stitches all the way around it, and I'm going to do, since I'm skipping a stitch, at least 2 in each one of the chain stitches back here, so that we follow the rule. We need to have at least the same number of stitches, and we'll probably need to at some point throw in an extra bullion stitch as it starts to get a little bit tight. We'll throw in an extra bullion stitch and then keep going. So you just do it as you see fit, as you see that it's needed. So I go into the front loop only and attach my yarn with my crochet hook. Pull that over to go over it. I am going to use an 8 wrap bullion stitch, so I am going to give myself a height of 3 chains and then pull the yarn out a little bit so it's safe, and get my latch hook and put it in there and pull that down tight. Now close my latch so it doesn't get in the way, and now I'm going to wrap 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And go into that same stitch where I did the chain 3, and make sure that the latch opens as it goes through that stitch. So I've got an open latch hook here, and I have the yarn that goes over the hook. I pull it back through, and that latch just closes on that yarn that I'm pulling through the stitch. Leave this tension pretty loose because we're pulling it through all of these loops that we put on the latch hook, the 8 loops that we did on the latch hook. So we have to be able to pull that through. So if we have too much tension, then it's not going to pull through. We want it to pull through. So then we can pull it back down and do 1 chain to close it off. Now I'm going to do another one in the same stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I push this down a little bit so that I have a little bit more space. The yarn doesn't hold me back. Don't hold me back from getting into the stitch. And I push the latch hook through. Need to pull this back a little bit so that the latch will open. Push it through the stitch. Put the yarn over the hook. The latch closes on the hook. Pull it through. Leave myself a nice loose tension and start dragging it through, or dragging over actually, the 8 loops that were on the latch hook. So now I have my loop on the outside, and I chain 1, 2, close. Now I am going to the next stitch. So I'm going to skip this stitch, at least on the popcorn stitch. That stitch is so small. I'm going to skip that stitch and go to the chain 1 and do 2 more. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And go in just to the front loop only. Leave that back loop open for future stitches. Open up the latch hook as it goes through. Make sure that latch ends up on the other side of the stitch. Put your yarn into the hook of the latch hook. Start pulling it through, and you see that latch closing onto your yarn and keeping it nice and safe. Nice loose tension as we pull it through the 8 loops on our latch hook. Pull it through, chain 1 to close. Do another one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Push it down a little bit so that that yarn lets me go into the same stitch, just the front loop. Push it through, make sure that latch opens and gets to the other side. That latch needs to be on the other side of the stitch. Put the yarn in the hook, start pulling back, that latch closes on it. Pull it through the stitch, and then pull it through with a nice loose tension all of the loops that are on the latch hook. And pull it out and chain 1. So far they're flaring out a little bit, and that's what we want to see. We don't want it to be straight up and down because we need it to make a curve. So we may be okay with 2 in each stitch, but if it starts to pull in a little bit and be more straight up and down like this, that's where you're going to need to throw in an extra bullion stitch. And then you may want to grab that 1 stitch that's that's in between the chains. So you might want to grab the actual bullion stitch and throw not the bullion stitch, the popcorn stitch in there, and just throw a bullion stitch on that. It may be tough to get 3 of them into the front loop of that. So I'm going to continue and go around, and I will show you at the end. And there it is. I didn't have to add any bullion stitches anywhere. I think doing 2 in each stitch, in every other stitch, was a good choice because anyway, it just worked out really well. So here's my last one. Now, in order to finish this round, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that out and get my crochet hook just because it's easier. And I'm going to try to get rid of, well, you can't really get rid of, but that chain 3 to start to give me the height. I'm going to try to go over it a little bit, and instead of slip stitching to the top of the chain, I'm going to slip stitch here to the top of the first bullion stitch. Does that work? Now, let's see if we slip stitch to the chain past it. Yeah. If I just went under the chain that was past it, and then it overlapped that chain so you can't see it. There's nothing wrong with it, but it just looks a little cleaner if you don't have one. So this is what it looks like. And what I will probably do in the least bit that I'm going to do on top of this, in addition to this, is to do another round, another border of half double crochet so that it's easier to have an edge to be connecting to another piece or to the shawl. So I will be doing that, and probably won't be doing anything here. I may just hot glue a little gemstone or something right there. That would be pretty. Anyway, so that's where I am. So we'll keep going with this, and you make some scrumbles, and we'll keep moving on.